There have been many videos of people playing a year without leaving the farm, staying on the farm until they earn 1,000,000 gold, a series mostly popularized by Call Me Kevin's series on the beach farm. But there's definitely a bias towards certain map layouts when it comes to being stuck on the farm, like said beach farm or the Four Corners farm. And I'm here to figure out which farm type is actually the best one. Not by theorizing, but by actually playing every single one of the 8 farm types that are available to us in 1.6. I'm starting with the standard farm because that's usually the first farm everyone goes for when they start playing the game. And it pretty much starts like every other playthrough, collecting the 15 parsnips Mayor Lewis graciously left me and getting started on clearing the farming space. I also cut the tall grass, trying to keep as many weeds as I can intact to multiply over the next few days. While I did cut down a few trees, I really wanted to get rid of the small debris first, for the same reason of letting my weeds spread, because in the end, those are my main source of seeds for this run. There was this big patch of tall grass between the hardwood stumps, and it was really difficult trying to avoid the weeds while cutting it down. I made sure to check my energy so I didn't exhaust myself, but apparently in the beginning you sometimes use 3 instead of 2 points for using your pickaxe, so I exhausted myself anyways and had to do the walk of shame back home. Willie sent me my first of many invitations I would ignore in my next 40 hours of playtime, and I went back to cleaning my farm, taking another gamble at 2 energy points, hoping not to exhaust myself this time. I leveled up my first skill and woke up to my first rainy day, which was spent, cleaning my farm. I also crafted my first chest to store my stuff and stay organized, and got started on planting my parsnips since I only had to hoe the spots since it was already raining. I also cut down another large patch of tall grass, and I exhausted myself again. The next few days started watering my crops, opening and ignoring people mailing me, reaching foraging level 2, cutting down tall grass patches, and clearing my farm from unnecessary trees and rocks, reaching mining level 1 before my parsnips were ready. I harvested them all and continued on with my usual tasks. I found my first artifact spot and got some coal from it, and you might be asking why I'm not replanting any of my seeds, and that's because I'm saving them for summer. Crops that grow in summer from the mixed seeds are a lot more profitable than the spring ones, and corn even stays through fall after growing, so you get a lot more from planting those seeds in summer. After reaching farming level 1, my next few days flew by very quickly. I found my first artifact, a rusty spur, and reached level 3 foraging from cutting down all those trees. I read through all my quests, accepting 100 gold from my getting started reward because I hate when the journal exclamation mark pulses in the top right of my screen, and I got some rice shoots which I planted close to my pond because then I didn't have to water them. I also moved my bed closer to the door for easier access and a good night's rest, reaching level 4 foraging and level 2 mining. I did some rearranging in my house to make it feel more cozy, and by the end of the first half of spring, my farm was starting to look pretty clean, and I had to walk around a lot to find more fully grown trees to cut down. After replanting a few acorns and maple seeds, afraid to have nothing to do if I didn't regrow more trees, I found my first carrot seeds, which I immediately put into the ground and watered. I also found this Woody Secrets book, but decided not to read it because I wanted to get the maximum gold by the end of the year. Choosing the Forester perk at level 5 foraging was the only thing that really made sense because I couldn't get any forageables to double anyways. And after watering my carrots for the last time, I could finally harvest my rice shoots and cut down another dozen trees. Since there wasn't anything left to do after harvesting my carrots, I cut down the last fully grown trees and walked a long lap around the perimeter of my farm to make sure I didn't miss any artifact spots. Although I did miss the artifact spot while digging it up and conveniently found 2 pieces of clay right next to each other. One quick nap later, I got out of bed to adopt my first cat. I wanted to have all my pet names start with a G, so I stuck with Groz, walked around the farm to cut down all of the trees that had grown during my 4-day nap, and slept until the last day of spring to repeat that process again. Sleeping for a few days perfectly grew enough trees to last me through my entire energy bar. When I woke up in summer to a clean farm, my time of mixed seeds had finally come. Most of the day was spent cutting some weeds and chopping down the few trees that had grown. And here's another cool thing about weeds in summer. Not only are the mixed seeds more profitable, but since the start of 1.6, they also have a chance of dropping mixed flower seeds. These can grow sunflowers, and those along with corn can be grown in summer and fall as well. Clearing the entire farm took me until 6 p.m. I could even feel the sun go down and darkness kiss the land of my farm, and this is probably the longest I'll ever stay up during this run. I enjoyed the night by prepping some farm space and planting a bunch of seeds I collected that day. Since my energy was already pretty low, I only hoed up a few more spaces before going to bed after 8 p.m. The next morning I remembered scarecrows exist, and I was very lucky that no crows stole any of my crops. So I crafted and placed a scarecrow and expanded my farm to place the rest of my seeds. Watering crops, petting, and feeding my cat was now my set morning routine. I accepted the 100 gold from crafting my scarecrow, and yeah, you guessed it, tree chopping time. This is only the first farm. I'm totally not going crazy chopping trees. The first crop ready to be harvested was wheat, which is the only way to get hay for my animals, which I do not have, since the only pet I own lives off of water and love. Radishes and pepper were more of the summer crops and pushed me to level 2 farming. Peppers are especially nice because they regrow, meaning I don't have to plant more mixed seeds for larger profits. The first summer flowers I plucked were some poppies, and chopping a few more trees got me to level 6 foraging. Summer spangles and sunflowers were ready next, and another nice thing about sunflowers is that they have a chance to drop more seeds to replant them. Harvesting all of my summer crops got me to level 3 farming, and I got excited about every rainy day I could get. I walked into my farm cave, which could be another form of making profit, but I really wanted a fair comparison between farms and decided I wanted to sell everything I collected at the end of the year to see how much I could make. On day 15 of summer, we can see another reason I love 1.6, the green rain days. Not only do I love upping my chances to get a living hat by cutting more weeds, but you also get a bunch of mixed seeds for cutting them down. Also, the big weeds are really fun to cut down. There were a bunch of crops ready to be plucked, and I used the rest of my energy to chop down trees. The summer after that went back to normal farming duties. Watering plants, taking care of my cat, petting and feeding it, digging up artifact spots, and harvesting my crops. Continuing all of those duties until another rainy day rolled around and I could skip through it, not without giving Graz a kiss though. Mystery boxes were unlocked, which wasn't too useful being stuck on the farm since I couldn't open them at Clint's. The last days of summer, I got really lucky with 3 rainy days in a row. I pushed through the last 2 days, harvesting the last fully grown crops, chopping down more trees, and reaching farming level 4 and foraging level 7 because of it. Fall started with cleanups and watering the leftover corn plants. I walked around the farm, getting rid of twigs and rocks to make some room for the weeds to spread, and continued this routine for the next few days, staying in with Graz during rainstorms. I got a few broccoli seeds from the seed spots and planted all of my flower seeds I had left from summer. With all of those seeds in the ground, my field looked very full again, which only meant more watering for me. Yay! Around 2 weeks into fall, I cut down the growing weeds, getting rid of most of them in hopes of gathering more mixed seeds. But as you can see, I got very unlucky, ending up with only 1 single seed. So I went back to chopping trees since wood collection was a lot more reliable for me and my money goals. I found a few more clusters of weeds a few days later, but they were just as unlucky with yielding mixed seeds, so I tended to the seeds that were already growing, harvesting a large amount of sunflowers. Artichokes were another of the mixed seed crops, but I feel like they are the hardest to get from all of the fall ones. I grew my broccoli, pet and fed Graz, and worked through the rainy days harvesting all of the beautiful fairy roses that were growing from the flower seeds. I also had my first mushroom tree grow, which I got really excited about, while simultaneously realizing I had missed a bunch of weeds in the bottom left of my farm. I did cut the mushroom tree down, which I normally wouldn't, but it wasn't of much use for me during this run, and I could sell the mushrooms for more profit. I chose the tiller profession, reaching level 5 farming, and harvested my first standard farm pumpkin on day 24 of fall. I also got a bunch of books from chopping trees and artifact spots, which is a great addition from 1.6. My last sunflower harvest sadly left me with a bunch of seeds I didn't have enough time to plant. But that didn't mean neglecting the rest of my crops, because there were still a few to harvest even on the last day of fall. Winter is a pretty boring season, not only in the regular Stardew run through, but especially during the stuck on the farm plays. I started the first day by planting the few powder melon seeds I'd gotten, and after feeding Graz, I took a long walk around the farm looking for artifact spots. Usually, winter has a few more spots than usual because they can give you winter roots and snow yams. I even found 5 of them on my first day, which was I think the most I found on any day of any run I did for the series. And so this monotonous routine continued on and on, watering crops, taking walks, and tilling up wiggling artifact spots. I thought taking a screenshot of the farm may be faster to find the spots without having to search for them on the farm, but to be honest. I don't think it helped that much. Maybe I'm just too blind for this, but I felt like the winter textures were just too confusing, so I went back to taking long walks and finding them myself. I had a meteorite spawn on the 8th of winter, which I of course couldn't get rid of since I couldn't upgrade my pickaxe, so I went back to digging up powder melon seeds and harvesting the first ones, only to find 4 more seeds a few days later. I thought I was finally done watering crops for this year, only for the game to mock me by giving me 2 more seeds just in time to be planted before the end of the season. But my luck hadn't run out yet because there were 2 more seed spots right next to each other a day later, giving me 6 more seeds to plant, which is of course exactly what I did, because there was still some time left since powder melons only take a week to grow. At this point I was so tempted to leave the farm, but I collected myself by talking to Graz every day until winter was finally over. To celebrate the first finished run, Graz gave me a piece of trash, and I took one last walk around the farm, digging up every last artifact spot. I then went through all of my stuff, selling every crop I harvested and every rock I collected over the past few months in my shipping bin. I did decide to keep a few things in my chest like coal, a stack of wood, and a few tree saplings and seeds, as if I was going to continue the run for another year, and that's exactly the amount of stuff I kept as the standard for all the following farms. This left me with a total of 45,000 gold, which was a lot more than I expected, honestly, especially looking at the few things I managed to sell in my shipping list. But for now, let's go on to farm number 2. The next farm on my list was the beach farm. This is one of the most popular farms when it comes to staying stuck on the farm content, especially since Call Me Kevin, who to this day has the most viral video on this challenge, chose this farm as well, and that's for many reasons. You can use sprinklers in the sun, which doesn't really matter since you won't have access to mining anyways, and therefore all you get is a larger area to plant and use. There are beach forageables that spawn on the beaches of your farm, like sea urchins and coral, and to my surprise, there are even regular forageables that can be collected in the bottom left of the farm. I don't know if that's a 1.6 thing to do, but I didn't know that until playing this run. The most exciting part on the beach farm though are the crates that randomly wash up and can be destroyed with an axe and have a chance of dropping survival burgers, mixed seeds, bombs, or even coffee, which isn't much, but in a run where every single abnormality to the game gets you excited, these crates were like opening presents on Christmas morning. Clearing the farm took me a long time, not only because the space was huge, but also because I was watching Hacksaw Ridge while I was playing this farm and I just can't handle Andrew Garfield in any of his roles, so I just stood there in awe, bawling my eyes out, while trying to focus on cutting down trees and tall grass. But seriously, if you haven't watched this movie based on a real story, I strongly recommend it to every single person watching. But back to the scheduled program: trees, rearranging furniture, trees, forageables, trees, and of course spending too much time in the menu crying over Andrew Garfield. I got a cat. Looking back at it now, I don't understand why I didn't just call him Garfield. Marnie was definitely not judging me at all. And I harvested my beautifully arranged parsnips. And oh my god, girl, can you please concentrate on playing the game you're playing and maybe stop recording if you can't cry and chop trees at the same time? You know, I think at this point Desmond Dawes was saving enemy soldiers and I had to find a box of tissues before crying on my keyboard, but I eventually got back to misclicking and missing seed spots as usual and getting excited about forageables and opening crates, even getting 2 in one day. Summer started lucky by finding one of my favorite hats, which I won't take off for the rest of my beach run. The size of the farming space also gave me so many mixed seeds, especially when I think about the amount of seeds I'd get on some of the farms. But altogether, the day was so eventful that I even saw darkness for once, and I didn't have enough energy to plant all of my seeds, so I finished planting and watering on day 2. It was another run of me forgetting about crows though, so I quickly crafted a scarecrow to save the rest of my crops. I got some coffee from a crate and finished planting my 4th row of crops with a few more seeds, which led to every rainy day being a blessing from the Stardew gods. No, watering every crop I can is fine. I love watering crops and I hate sprinklers, but just as I lost my will to live, water plants, I was blessed by a visit from everyone's favorite crop fairy. Look at my hardworking lady. Sadly, most of my crops in that area would have been ready the next day anyways, but our girl is trying her best, okay? The crop fairy heard me complain though, which made me feel really bad when I saw her again a few days later to help me even more. I happily harvested all of my crops, very thankful, and replanted my sunflower seeds. I also planted some acorns, pine cones, and maple seeds to have something to do once my crops ran out. And since I did that on the first farm too, I wanted to stay as close to the gameplay I went through before. My green rain day came on the 15th of summer, where I really got the most out of the large space on the beach farm. It took so long to cut down all of the weeds that I was still swinging my scythe by 6 p.m. Most of the seeds were put into the ground, saving one day of watering, but I did save a few of the seeds for fall. I got a new shirt, slowly putting together my outfit, and got very lucky with 3 rainy days back to back, which led to a bountiful harvest on day 22 of summer. By the end of summer, I was ready to stop watering, knowing very well that it wasn't going to stop here, but rather just get a lot worse when fall came around. And fall came quickly, where I planted all of my leftover seeds to get to 40 crops, just enough to use up an entire watering can. I didn't take too many walks in fall, spending most of my time watering crops and taking care of my tree farm, and every now and then I'd walk to my usual foraging spots, where I collected a few bits and pieces. When I harvested my crops on day 9, all I could think about was how much Haley would love this farm, and thinking about her helped me push through watering my entire field for the rest of fall. Every time when rain blessed the sandy beaches of my farm, I used the time to go for a quick foraging walk and enjoy the beauty of the beach farm, which truly is one of my favorite layouts. I tried to collect all forageables available to me and got most of the fall ones on day 18 of fall. The last days of season 3 were just pure watering grind, taking care of my crops and taking a long walk every few days to collect all of the items I'd collected, which luckily didn't despawn between days, so there really wasn't a lot of pressure for me to go out there every day. Summer ended with the last harvest, and I skipped through the first few days of winter because I truly couldn't be bothered to wake up the first days. My mood was instantly lifted though when I found a rainbow shell on my beach on the end of the first week of winter, and now I was motivated to finish up the winter season, partially because I really wanted to go to bed in real life, and also because I was excited for the future layouts to come. Once a week I'd go on a beach walk, collecting all of the generated artifact spots, chopping down a few fully grown trees that were left, and of course opening every crate I could find. I took one last walk around the farm to make sure I didn't leave anything, and then watched my hard work reflect on the amount of money I made by the end of the year. I was a little surprised though, because it wasn't that much more gold than it was on the standard farm, and I had a much better feeling on the beach farm, but there was still even better ones to come. The Riverlands farm is not one of those. In 1.6, this layout was made a little more attractive by adding a fish smoker to it from the beginning, which isn't too useful when you don't have a fishing rod, but we will at least be able to use it at a later point in this run. The Riverlands farm is also very tiny. Not as tiny as other farms I've played on, but definitely a lot smaller than all of the other farms in the base game, so there wasn't lots of debris and trees for me to clean up at all. And while I did level up foraging and mining, most of the junk on my farm was cleared by the end of week 1. On Sunday I harvested my parsnips, even getting a gold one, which after cutting down a few more trees gave me farming level 1 and foraging level 3. I decided to plant a few more trees because I already knew I was going to be bored by summer, because there was really nothing to do on the Riverlands farm. I slept through the second week to wake up to a bunch of trees ready to be cut down, and even collecting a single salmonberry and some unmilled rice. I made sure to leave the house on the 20th to get my cat from Marnie and scroll through the first name starting with G, and while I was outside I cut down even more trees. On this farm particularly, having a cat is even more important than on the others, because with the 1.6 update, pets can give you gifts and cats can give you fish, and since the Riverland farm starts with a fish smoker, this is the only way we can actually make use of it during this run, even without leaving the farm. So I made sure to take care of my cat every day, even if it was the only thing I did that day. Summer came quick and I was cutting weeds quicker, also finding an owl statue. But even after cutting every single shrub this land had to offer, all I got was 13 mixed seeds and 15 flower seeds. Before the addition of the latter in 1.6, this run would have been over in minutes. After placing a scarecrow, I prepped my farm space for all of my seeds, and the next day was immediately a rainy one. But after that, the watering phase started, and after reaching level 4 foraging, I had a pretty early green rain day on summer the 5th. I cut down all of the weeds and found this glitchy bush on top of a meteorite. I also found these cute overalls and decided it was time to switch it up a little and look like a real farmer for once. The mixed seed harvest was not great, but it was something at least. Finding my first artifact on the 23rd of summer really says it all. Fall started with the few leftover corn and sunflowers, taking care of my kitty and chopping down the few trees I could find. Another thing I hate about the Riverlands farm is that so many things land in the water, never to be seen again. And every now and then I sat down with my glitchy meteorite to talk to him about my endless sorrow of losing wood to the river on my farm. On day 19 of fall, Grokkers and I finally reached 5 hearts of friendship, and they gave me some bat wings as their first gift, which I got really excited about. And immediately the next day I got my first fish, a tiger trout. So I grabbed a piece of coal, ran inside, and placed the fish in my smoker. While waiting for it to finish, I cut down the trees outside of my house and talked to Glitchy about how exciting all of this was.
You know, this is the only time in any of the runs I'm gonna have smoked fish. Pretty excited, huh? Yeah, I thought that's what you were gonna say.
The smoked tiger trout was the first of many fish to go into my chest, followed by a carp I got a few days later.
Look, I know you probably don't care, but look at the pumpkin I just harvested.
When winter rolled around, my walks were pretty short and boring, but I tried my best to be thorough with them, collecting fish like perch and pikes from Grokkers, and I also got a chub from them, which I apparently wasn't too happy about, or confused? I don't really know why I reacted like that. I think I was having little crash outs at this point, but luckily the season was almost over. All that was left were a few more artifact spots and Pierre yelling at me not to go to his competitors, even though I wasn't going to buy from either one of them. Because equal rights, my friend. I instead collected one more winter root and started selling all of my stuff, and putting everything else in my leftover chest, which I moved next to my owl statue. I really had high hopes for my smoked fish, but as you can see, the result of my cooking journey wasn't too good, so it wasn't even worth it. I was in need for some change, so the next farm I picked was the Meadowlands farm. The Meadowlands farm was added in 1.6 and is special because it starts you with 2 chickens. Although you can't buy hay, they can go outside and feed on the grass that is outside of the coop. So the first thing I did was clean up that area so the grass had enough area to spread to, and my chicken had as much grass as possible to feed off of. I cleaned up all of the debris and got rid of the huge amount of tall grass that is on this farm. I think it's a lot more than on other farms because of the chickens, but that might just be me. The chickens started laying eggs a lot earlier than I expected, so I had my first set of eggs on the 3rd day of spring. And I got an achievement for that because this achievement replaces the one with the parsnips on the regular farm. I continued my mornings feeding my chickens with some hay because there was a rainy day on the 3rd, so I had to replace 2. And then went back to chopping trees, planting some rice shoots I found, and clearing more of the area near the coop so I had more space for some weeds to spread to. And since I only had 2 chickens and I would never get any more, I just made the coop area a little smaller. I planted some carrot seeds I found in front of my farmhouse, watered and plucked them a few days later, and also harvested my unmilled rice. And realized I could never access this top area because it was blocked by this stump, and I couldn't even use the chair method because I didn't have a chair, only this bench in my farm. So I just had to live with the rest of the farm space that was given to me. Salmonberry season started and I got so frustrated when I wanted to harvest the berries from this bush and they landed in an area I could never access. So I just had to stare at them and be sad about it. But at least my chickens were laying eggs and being happy, and I got my first gold egg on the 17th of spring. The game wanted to mock me when it gave me another salmonberry in a spot I could never reach, so now I had 2 of them just laying around and I couldn't do anything about it. Marnie gave me a cat soon after, and I wanted to name it the same way I did with the other cats and wanted to incorporate the word hay, and I ended up with, I think, the perfect name. Marnie left the cat on my doorstep and I went back to my chickens, renaming them as well because I wanted all of my animals to start with a G. And then back to the normal, chopping down trees. By the end of summer, I had collected so many eggs, and I was really surprised because I would have never thought that 2 chickens would be so lucrative. In the beginning of summer, I did the same I did on all the other farms and went to cutting down weeds and planting a few of my crops in front of my farmhouse. I didn't plant all of my seeds yet because I didn't have too many and I just wanted to keep my watering at a reasonable amount. So I chopped some trees instead, and there were many of them. Even though the farm is not as big as others, it's a lot bigger than it looks. Many parts of the Meadowlands farm are covered in grass, so you don't get too many mixed seeds, but I made the best of it and planted the ones I got along the way. And by the 9th of summer, my farm had grown a significant amount. I had 2 rainy days in a row where I just took care of Gay, and on the 15th of summer, I had a pretty late green rain day compared to the other farms. which isn't too bad yet because I can still plant all of the seeds I get. So that's exactly what I did, extend the farm space, plant my seeds, and save a few for fall. My chickens were still happy, but I was slowly running short on hay since I couldn't buy anything, and I was scared that they would soon hate me. But for now, I stuck to my duties and found a few more summer squash seeds that I could plant on my farm, so that's exactly what I did. The nice thing about planting wheat is that it has a chance to drop hay, but sadly the chance is not that high, so I only got one more piece to save me from my chickens hating me. But they were still happy and laying eggs, so I don't want to complain. I planted some trees as I did on all of the other farms, and kept on harvesting crops and fixing the fence on my coop. When fall started, I planted the rest of my seeds I had saved, which were mostly flower seeds, and my chickens still love me, so that's great. But it didn't take too long because one rainy day later, my chickens did not like me anymore, and I fear that that will stay for the rest of the run. So on this farm, I might even be a little happier about the sunny days. I mean, yeah, I have to water all of my crops by hand, but waking up, walking to the coop, and seeing that little heart above my chickens' heads is just so worth it. I didn't bother going into the coop every day, so I just waited for some eggs to collect and walked into it once to collect them all. My crops were continuing to grow, and I had one of these fern trees grow, so I chopped that down and continued harvesting more flowers and crops, mostly corn. I reached level 5 farming, and I wanted to go for the tiller profession, but then I thought, might as well go for the rancher profession since this is the only farm I'm gonna have eggs on, so that's what I went for. Fall 13th, I walked around, getting rid of all of the weeds that were left, and I made another chest because my eggs were starting to overflow in the other one. There were still days in between that my chickens loved me because they still had a few sunny days to go out and eat some grass. And they were laying a huge amount of eggs for me to collect. But I also knew winter was coming, and winter was not going to be good for my relationship with my chickens. The first day was still fine, they were still laying large eggs and being happy, but that would soon not be the case anymore. I took a long walk as I did on all of the other farms trying to find artifact spots. And I checked the relationship with my chickens because I wanted to see how fast it would drop, and it didn't take too long for it to go down. So I tried to cover my sadness by planting more powder melon seeds to feel a sense of responsibility in my heart. Surprisingly, on some of the days they still loved me and gave me a heart reaction, and I don't really know where this comes from since they can't go out, don't have a heater, and pretty much aren't taken care of, so maybe anyone knows why they have heart reactions. So I continued taking my walks, having a few angry days with my chickens, followed by one day where they were kinda happy. I still have no idea what that was. And even though they were still laying eggs, the size and the amount of them went down immensely. So I was very happy when I could release them from their suffering by reaching the end of winter and starting to sell all of my things. I had a fair amount of crops, but the eggs really were the game changers here, and I made more than 10k only from the eggs. The wilderness farm will just have to skip through for most of the parts because it's basically just a smaller standard farm, because I can't leave the farm and I never stayed up late enough to see the monsters that would spawn after 7 p.m. So it plays itself pretty much the same. I chopped down trees, collecting the wood, planting my starter parsnips, and harvesting them. Did more and more and more tree chopping until most of the farm was cleared by salmonberry season. I collected some of those sweet salmonberries, and none of them got to places that I couldn't reach, which I was really happy about, and got a cat that I named Gertrude. Gertrude? I don't even know how to pronounce that name. When summer rolled around, I collected all of my weeds, and I got a few mixed seeds, but not as many as I expected. So I hoed up some farming space and planted them in the ground, watering them for the next day. I also again forgot crows exist. I know we're seeing a pattern at this point, so I crafted a scarecrow and placed it down to save the rest of my crops. I took care of my cat, chopping down a few more trees, and harvested my first big round of flowers. The green rain day was on day 16 of summer, and I planted all of the seeds I got from it, including the mossy seeds. And then just regular farming duties, watering crops, watering more crops, and harvesting them by the end of the season. Summer went by quickly, and I started fall season by planting the rest of my flower seeds. I was really lucky this run with lots of rainy days, so it went by even quicker than I hoped for. for. When winter came, I took my usual walks, collected a bunch of artifacts from the artifact spots, and I collected all of the powder melon seeds I got throughout the season to plant them all in one go. While waiting for them to grow, I kept on taking my walks, grabbing a few more seeds until I could finally harvest all of my powder melons. And then winter was pretty much over, so I went to collect all of my stuff, which wasn't a lot, and put it into my shipping bin. As expected, it wasn't too bad, but it still was one of the worst farms money-wise. The Hilltop farm is one of my favorites because I hate going to the mines and I love having a big quarry. And every time I go down there, I forget how big it actually is. Quarry was great for stone and copper, and I was excited to see how far I could get my mining in 1 year. And this is also one of the only farms where you can meet Clint because you can actually get copper. So he came to my doorstep the next day to give me the recipe for the furnace. I planted some of my parsnips in these few spots because I had the entire spring to wait for them anyways, and there was no way for weeds to spread into those areas. And then I went on to clear the rest of my farm, chopping the last few trees by week 3 of spring. I checked my quarry every now and then, making sure to mine up every single stone. And a few days later, the crop fairy came to skip the last day of my 3-day carrot period, which wasn't too helpful, but I'm still always grateful to see her. Marnie came by to give me my cat, and I went for the randomizer again, which took so long to find a name with G, only for me to skip one and go back to give her that name anyways. Gep brought good luck because the next day immediately was a rainy one. And so I waited for summer to clear my farm from all the weeds and see how many seeds I could get on the Hilltop farm. And it was more than I expected since a bunch of the farm is covered by the quarry and the river going straight through it. I did remember to bring a scarecrow this time, so I placed it down and planted all of my crops near the river so I didn't have too far to walk when I had to fill up my watering can. And this was a great move because I hate walking too far to fill up the can, and now I had the river close by. The Hilltop farm had a really early green rain day as well, so I walked around collecting even more seeds, which weren't too many, but that was expected size-wise. I continued watering all of my crops, mining up ore in my quarry and all of the stone that came with it, and harvested the crops when fully grown. Yeah, we get it, it's still the same procedure. The really annoying thing about the Hilltop farm is that there is a large stump and a stone that block 2 of the bridges that go across the river, so you can pretty much only use the middle one. And there were so many times where I wanted to go across one of the other bridges because I forgot they were blocked, and that gets really annoying quickly. Fall rolled around and I continued chopping trees that were fully grown by then and mining resources from the quarry. And I feel like there are a lot more artifact spots that spawn on the quarry. I don't know if it was just a coincidence or if that's actually a mechanic that comes with the quarry. And I also feel like there are a lot more large stumps on this farm, which would be great if you had an upgraded pickaxe. But I don't, so I can only continue to water my crops and harvest them when they were ready. And that's exactly what I did. On day 12 of fall, I went around cutting down a few more weeds and enjoyed every rainy day inside with my cat. And on the 21st of fall, Gep finally loved me and gave me her first fish. At this point, I truly found amusement in anything out of the ordinary, and I love it when you organize the chest and press the button over and over again and the flowers change colors. I don't know, it's so stupid, but at this point I think I would laugh about anything. Winter was the same as usual as well, ignoring letters from the townies and walking up to the quarry every few days to collect resources. I planted the powder melon seeds I got, watered them, and took care of Gep, of course. And every day I walked out of this farmhouse, I prayed for the Stardew gods not to give me any more powder melons to water, but I apparently was just too lucky. And here you can see the main reason I hate the part with the bridges, because if you want to walk to the southern part of your farm, you have to walk all the way around to get an artifact spot that could have been otherwise gotten by walking over the southern bridge. But I pushed through winter, even got a few mushroom trees that weren't gonna fully grow by the end of the season, and I got started on smelting the copper bars, so I had some to sell by the end of the year. And when that last day of winter came, I sold all of my stuff and waited patiently to see how much money I got from the Hilltop farm. And it was a lot worse than I expected. The size of the farm really limits the amount of seeds you get, so the amount of ore you get from the quarry doesn't really get you a lot further. I saved the best thing for last because I wanted to have something exciting to look forward to, and the forest farm is by far my favorite. I I cut down the tall grass and got started on chopping down trees, but the most important thing about the forest farm are these swirly weeds. There is a chance for normal weeds to turn into these swirly weeds, and they will always drop mixed seeds when you cut them down, which is amazing if you can't leave the farm because you get a ton of mixed seeds that way. I cut down even more trees and got started on some farming space. I decided to also plant some seeds in spring because I will have so many seeds and I didn't want to have to plant and water them all in summer. Marnie brought me my cat and I randomized Granard as her name, and I made sure to run around looking for forageables every now and then, cutting down every mixed seed weed I could find on my way. Back home, I kept on watering the few crops I had left from planting mixed seeds, and I did a last run for forageables on the last day of spring. The forageables don't despawn until the last day of the season, so you can just wait and have them collect on your farm. I found a houseplant I had gotten from one of the trees I chopped down, and waited for summer to finally start cutting down some of the normal weeds. At this point, I had already gotten so many seeds, so I prepped the huge farming space to put the first of them into the ground. I ended up with 2 large plots of land, and I was already so sick of using my watering can. But the show must go on, so I harvested my first wheat and waited for the green rain day to give me even more seeds. I tried to mainly only cut the green rain day weeds because the normal ones just stay and the weeds from the green rain despawn the next morning. During the level 5 foraging pick, I should have gone for gatherer because that would have been a lot more profitable, but we gotta make mistakes, I guess. On day 7 of summer, I extended my farming space to plant even more seeds, and I still had 45 left. More trees were chopped down, and at this point it took me more than a real life minute to water all of my crops, which you can see sped up here. But foraging never loses its charm because I just love finding random stuff on the ground. And I didn't know common mushrooms spawned as a forageable in summer, which I was really surprised about. It didn't take long until I had to craft another chest because mine were overflowing because I had so many things. But I guess we're suffering in success. I had another huge harvest on day 14 of summer and decided to plant a few summer seeds because I had enough forageables to craft them. And I apparently just hated myself so much that I wanted to give myself even more stuff to water. And watering I did, enjoying every storm, quickly going outside to plant even more seeds. But God, does this sound never stop being satisfying. I took a few more walks to chop trees before the end of the season and was excited to see the colors change for fall. I watered the sunflowers and corn that was left and decided to extend my farm even further because I had so many seeds left and I at least wanted to try to plant and water them all. Fall is my favorite season because I love mushrooms, so I was very excited to walk around and collect them all. And when the second week ended, I finally cut down all of the weeds that I have been collecting, only to end up with a total amount of 85 seeds. There was no freaking way I was going to plant all of those before the end of the season. So I just decided my farm was going to stay the way it was, and I was just going to harvest everything that was ready to be harvested. I did replant the sunflowers though and reached level 8 farming by the end of the season, which I haven't reached on any other farm yet. I ended the 3rd season with another rainy day, and I got some river jelly for my cat. I didn't even know they dropped that, which I was really excited about because they sell for so much money. I collected my final run of crops on the last day of fall, ending the season with a huge harvest and a last walk around the farm to check if I forgot forageables or any artifact spots. I'm just gonna skip through winter because winter's just the same it was on any other farm. There are no forageables that spawn in winter, even on the forest farm, sadly, but I did get another river jelly for my cat. So the winter season ended like every other winter by selling all of my things. I couldn't wait to see how much money I made on this farm, and I wasn't disappointed. This was by far the most money I made on any other farm, and also skill-wise I got really far. And that leaves us with one more farm to go, the Four Corners farm, and I'll promise I'll make it quick. The Four Corners farm has the most to offer. It has 4 quadrants, and I think it was set up to be played as a multiplayer farm because every quadrant has something special about it. The top right quadrant is pretty much just the standard farm in a smaller space. The top left quadrant is like the forest farm, so it also has the weeds that turn into the swirly ones. The bottom right quadrant is for mining, so it has a small version of the Hilltop quarry, but it is by far not as lucrative as the one on the Hilltop farm. And the bottom left quadrant is for fishing, so it has a small pond, which isn't very useful for me since I can't have a fishing rod on this run. I cleared the farm from all of the debris the same way I did on all of the other farms. And I made sure to check the top left quadrant every once in a while to see if any new weeds had spawned. Once a week I went to the bottom right quadrant to go check the quarry and mine some copper and stone. My cat on this farm landed on the name Grandpa, so I welcomed her to her new home and went back to cutting trees on the rest of my farm. I stored all of my stuff in my chest and of course did some rearranging in my farmhouse. And that's already spring for ya. When summer started, I cut down all of the weeds in the top right quadrant and started planting the seeds near to the pond for the same reason I did on the Hilltop farm, so I was close to a water source to fill up my watering can. I also planted some tree saplings and went down to my farm space to water my crops every day. And that's pretty much my routine for summer, going to the top left quadrant to collect some mixed seeds from the weeds and cutting down some trees for more wood and for more space at my farm. I also check the quarry every once in a while, and I'm pretty sure the quarry spaces have a higher chance of spawning artifact spots because I do see them there most often. So I hoed up the spots, mined some stone, and had a visit from my favorite crop fairy. In the third week of summer, I cut down the rest of the weeds on my farm, except for the ones in the top left, because I saw that the green rain day was coming and I wanted more space for new weeds to grow. I also crafted a furnace and got started on smelting some copper. As soon as the green rain passed, I went back to harvesting more crops for the rest of summer. Fall started and I extended my farm a little bit because I had a bunch of seeds. I didn't expect to get so many, but the top left quadrant is quite lucrative when it comes to mixed seeds. And so I extended my farm space even more. And the quarry still had stone and copper spawning, but was definitely not worth to check more than once a week. By the end of fall, I had collected a bunch of stuff and my chests were slowly filling up. When winter started, all I had left to do was chopping trees and mining out some farming plots for some powder melon seeds. I of course went on a few walks every now and then to collect some artifact spots and go down to the quarry to collect some resources. Winter went by as quick as every other winter, and I sorted through all of my stuff, smelting the rest of the copper into copper bars, and selling everything in my shipping bin. And as you can see, the Four Corners farm is also very lucrative money-wise, and I think I had the most fun on this farm because there was just a larger variety of things to do there. But which farm ended up being my favorite in the end? Well, the Forest farm was definitely the most lucrative money-wise, and the Meadowlands farm was the one I spent the most time on. I feel like I had the most fun on the Four Corners farm because it had a huge variety, but the beach farm with the crates and all of the forageables was also very exciting. So it really comes down to personal preference, who would have thought? And in the end, who am I to tell you how to play the game? You might just have to go figure it out for yourself.